What if you had the power to bring back those you've lost? Would you seize it? In the vast and complex world of science, certain possibilities push the boundaries of our understanding, and one such possibility is cloning, a process that involves creating an exact genetic replica of a living organism, right down to the very last DNA strand. This isn't just a work of science fiction, but a reality in the realm of genetic engineering, a reality that our protagonist, a brilliant scientist, was well-versed in. Our scientist, let's call him Dr. John, wasn't just a man of science, but also a man of deep emotions. He had a beautiful family, a loving wife, and 2 adorable children, who filled his life with joy and laughter. Dr. John was not just an expert in genetics, he was also a devoted husband and a doting father. His family was his world, and his home was filled with love and happiness. His expertise in genetics wasn't just confined to the laboratory. Dr. John always found ways to inspire his children with the wonders of science. He would often engage them in discussions about the mysteries of life and the universe, instilling in them a curiosity that is the hallmark of every great scientist. However, the same science that fascinated him also presented him with a profound ethical dilemma. The power of cloning, while offering immense possibilities, also raised serious moral and ethical questions. For Dr. John, these were not just abstract ethical debates, but questions that would soon become deeply personal. His life was perfect, or so it seemed, until that one fateful day when everything changed. A day that started like any other, but ended in a tragedy that would shatter his world and test the very limits of his scientific beliefs. One fateful day, the unthinkable happened. An airplane crash. The scientist's world turned upside down. A day that started like any other, filled with laughter, hugs, and goodbyes, ended in unimaginable tragedy. The scientist, a man of reason and intellect, found himself navigating a sea of grief, a tempest of emotions that no formula could quantify, no equation could solve. His home, once filled with the sound of his children's laughter and the warmth of his wife's love, now echoed with silence and loneliness. Meals for 1 at a table meant for 4. Empty rooms that were once filled with life now served as constant reminders of his loss. His dreams, once populated with happy family outings and shared successes, were now haunted by the chilling emptiness of loss. His heart, once full of love, was now a gaping void of sorrow and despair. Yet in the darkest corners of his grief, a spark ignited, a thought, a possibility. In the depths of his despair, an idea began to form. What if he could use his knowledge to bring his family back? Those words echoed in the scientist's mind, a haunting melody of hope and dread. A brilliant mind, once focused on the pursuit of knowledge, now consumed by grief and desperation. In the silence of his lab, surrounded by the tools of his trade, he contemplated the unthinkable. Every fiber of his being ached for his lost loved ones, longing for their laughter, their warmth, their presence. And within his reach lay a possibility, a slim, unproven chance to fill the gaping void their departure had left. His mind raced through the labyrinth of his knowledge, the science of cloning. He could recreate them, cell for cell, a mirror image of their physical selves. But as he stood on the precipice of this decision, his heart heavy with the weight of it, he couldn't ignore the ethical dilemmas that loomed. Cloning in its essence was replication, not resurrection. He grappled with the question, would these clones truly be his family? Would they possess the same memories, the same quirks, the same souls? Or would they be mere imitations, hollow echoes of the people he had loved? His scientific mind knew the risks, the potential for unforeseen consequences. The world of science and society had yet to fully explore or understand the ramifications of cloning. He was venturing into uncharted territory, a pioneer on a path fraught with moral and ethical quandaries. Yet the pain of his loss was unbearable, a gnawing void that threatened to consume him. The possibility of seeing his family again, of hearing their voices, of holding them close, was a siren call he found hard to resist. His decision wasn't made lightly. It was born out of the depths of his despair, fueled by a love that transcended the boundaries of life and death. It was a decision that would change his life, and perhaps the course of science, forever. In the silence of his lab, amidst the hum of machines and the glow of monitors, he made his choice. He decided to play God. It seemed like a miracle. His family was back. At first, it was pure bliss. The scientist was over the moon, his heart filled with a joy that was almost too overwhelming to contain. His home was once again filled with the familiar sounds of laughter, the clatter of dishes, the soft whispers of bedtime stories. It was as if the clock had been turned back, the tragedy erased, his family restored. But soon the scientist began to notice subtle differences. His wife's smile was a little less radiant, her laughter a little less infectious. His children's eyes no longer sparkled with the innocence and zest for life they once held. The clones were perfect replicas in physical form, but it was the spirit, the essence that was missing. The soul, the very thing that made them who they were. The scientist found himself yearning for the memories of his original family. The way his wife's eyes crinkled when she laughed, the way his son's face lit up when he played his favorite game, the way his daughter danced around the house without a care in the world. These were the things that made them unique, the things that made them irreplaceable. The emotional toll began to weigh heavily on the scientist. He was haunted by the ghostly echoes of his past, the memories of his original family that he could never truly recreate. It was a stark reminder of the price he had paid for playing God. The clones, on the other hand, lived in a state of constant confusion and despair, trapped in a world they didn't belong to, a world they didn't understand. They were mere shadows of the people they were meant to replace, a cruel parody of a life they were never meant to live. And so the scientist was left with a painful truth. In his desperate attempt to defy the laws of nature, he had lost more than he had gained. His family was gone, and in their place were hollow shells, reminders of a past he could never reclaim. He realized too late that he had opened Pandora's box. The scientist was left with a haunting question. Had he done the right thing? In the aftermath of his audacious experiment, our scientist found himself grappling with an overwhelming sense of guilt. His mind, once the home of equations, theories, and the excitement of discovery, was now a battlefield of ethical dilemmas. He had brought back his family from the clutch of death, yes, but at what cost? The echoes of his actions reverberated not just within him, but also impacted his cloned family. They were not just mere replicas. They were sentient beings with thoughts, feelings, and a life that was their own, albeit borrowed from the past. The scientist's guilt manifested in his interactions with them, his eyes betraying the internal conflict he was wrestling with every day. The family he had so desperately tried to recreate was now caught in the crossfire of his ethical struggle. They lived, but did they really live? The scientist grappled with this question every waking moment. He had given them life, but had he given them the life they deserved? His once cherished home was now a constant reminder of the Pandora's box he had opened. The laughter that once filled the house was now replaced by an uneasy silence, punctuated only by his own self-doubt. The joy of their company, the reason he had embarked on this scientific endeavor, now seemed like a distant memory. His family, though physically present, seemed to be drifting away from him, lost in a sea of unanswered questions and unspoken guilt. The love he had hoped to rekindle was overshadowed by the magnitude of his actions. He had played God, and now he was paying the price. His struggle was not just with the science that he had manipulated, but with the morality of his actions. The scientist had set out to cheat death, to control the uncontrollable. But in the end, he was left questioning the very fabric of his decision. He had learned the hard way that there are some things science should not meddle with. Cloning, a scientific marvel, or a step too far. We've journeyed through a tale of heartbreak and scientific ambition, scrutinizing the actions of a scientist driven by the most profound loss. He sought to fill the void left by his family through cloning, only to learn that there are repercussions to playing God. What did we learn from this? That science, as powerful and promising as it may be, is not a panacea for our pain. Cloning in this context became a mirror reflecting the scientist's desperate hope, but also his disregard for the natural order of life. It underscores the ethical implications we must weigh when pushing the boundaries of what's possible. The story also serves as a stark reminder that understanding the potential consequences of our actions is paramount. For every action, there's a reaction, and often, it's one we may not be prepared for. In the end, it is not about what science allows us to do, but what we should do. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.